The night my father told me to get out of the house I'd paid for. My fork clattering against the plate was the only sound that defended me. Have you ever given everything for your family, only to be treated like you were nothing? Share your story in the comments. Hit the like button and subscribe to see what happens next. My name is Elena Hartman. I am 34 years old, and I work as an environmental engineer. I live in Omaha. One night, something really bad happened at my parents' house. It was supposed to be a normal Sunday dinner, calm and ordinary. My parents, my brother Ethan, and his wife were all sitting at the dinner table. A big roast sat there, smelling delicious, but nobody touched it yet. Then my dad leaned forward and said in a cold voice, "You can take the guest room or move out." He looked directly at me, like he was reading a rule out loud, like it wasn't even a choice. My brother jumped in immediately, sounding happy and mean at the same time. "Better if you're gone by tomorrow," he said, like he had been waiting for this moment. I froze. My fork slipped from my hand and clattered loudly against my plate. I had been paying for most of the house for years, electric bills, repairs, and even a brand new fridge. I had worked hard to keep everything running smoothly. And now they were treating me like I didn't matter, like I was invisible, like I could just disappear. My brother's wife smirked, her eyes shining in a way that made it feel like she had won a huge prize. I tried to argue, my voice shaking. I listed all the money I had spent on the house. I told them I had paid for repairs, bills, and even the brand new appliances. But my dad just waved his hand, as if what I said didn't matter. "It's decided," he said, cold and final. My mom stayed quiet. She looked down at her plate, not making a sound, not looking at me at all. Rage and frustration bubbled up inside me. I felt my chest tighten, my hands clench into fists. I stood up, grabbed my keys from the counter, and said through gritted teeth, "Fine, I'm gone." That very night, I packed all of my things. I took my TV, the couch, even my coffee maker, everything that was mine. I carried it all out of the house I had once called home, my childhood home, the house I had worked so hard to keep running. I felt tears burn in my eyes, but I didn't cry. I couldn't. I had to leave. A week later, my phone buzzed. It was my mom calling. Her voice was tight and worried. I picked up, and I could hear my brother yelling frantically in the background. His voice was loud, almost breaking with panic. "She's lying. Mom, tell me she's lying." My heart sank. The noise spilled through the phone as I tried to start putting my life back together. Whatever had happened next would turn their world upside down. Years ago, I had moved back into my parents' house in Omaha to help them. After my grandmother passed away, the bills started piling up. Mortgage payments, utility bills, repairs, and even the leaky roof that my dad ignored. All of it was piling up like a heavy mountain. I decided I would help. I was an environmental engineer, and I had a good job. I worked hard to cover most of the bills. My paycheck went to new windows, a water heater, and keeping the lights on. I worked 60 hours a week, rushing from job sites to writing late-night reports. I gave my life to help my family. But it never seemed like enough. Dad would nod politely when I handed him receipts, but his attention was always on Ethan. Ethan had a strange ability to fail but still be praised. He burned through one business after another. Food trucks, crypto apps, and sketchy online stores that folded in just months. Each time he returned with a new idea, Dad would get excited. He would praise Ethan's vision, as if Ethan were some kind of genius. Meanwhile, all my contributions went unnoticed. One day, I overheard my mom whisper to Dad, "She's just here to help George. Ethan is the one with big dreams." My chest tightened. It felt like a knife twisting inside me. I wasn't just helping, I was keeping the house running, paying hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. But to them, I was just a helper. I felt like I was a tenant paying rent instead of being their daughter. Then Ethan met his wife. He brought her to dinner one night, all smiles, introducing her as a real estate agent. Dad and Mom couldn't stop praising her. They said she was polished, smart, and seemed to have everything together. I watched her arrive in a sleek black SUV. Her watch sparkled in the light, expensive and shiny. She seemed rich, but it didn't add up. Real estate in Omaha wasn't that profitable, especially for someone her age, barely 30. She laughed too loud at Dad's jokes, tossing her hair in a way that made Ethan beam proud of himself like he had found a treasure. I tried to ask her about her work, about her clients and properties, but she always changed the subject. She would talk vaguely about a big deal she was closing. I started noticing more things. She would come over carrying shopping bags from stores I couldn't afford. She would show off new gadgets, phones, or clothes, saying they were business expenses. Ethan never questioned any of it. He just bragged about how hard she worked. Dad clapped him on the back and said, "You picked a good one." I asked Mom once if she noticed anything strange about her lifestyle, and she just said, "Elena, don't be so skeptical. She's successful." It wasn't just the money. She had a way of controlling conversations like she was always selling something. She talked about flipping houses, using big words like equity and leverage. Dad's eyes would light up every time she spoke. Ethan hung on her every word, like she was a magical teacher. I tried to speak up, saying I just paid the property taxes, but Dad would cut me off. "Let's hear about her next project," he said. I felt invisible. I kept thinking about all the money I spent on the house, all the weekends I worked fixing leaks, all the nights I stayed late paying bills. I wasn't just helping, I was holding the family together. But they treated me like I was replaceable. Ethan and his wife were the stars of the show. I would lie awake at night in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, wondering why my hard work didn't matter. Something about her confidence, her polished smile, and the way she seemed to control everyone made me uneasy. I had a feeling she was planning something big, something that might cost us more than just my place at the table. That Sunday evening, I walked into the dining room, expecting a calm meal. The table was set with Mom's old china. The smell of the roast filled the air. I slid into my usual chair, forcing a smile. Dad carved the meat. Mom fussed with the napkins, looking nervous. Then the front door slammed open. Ethan ran in, dragging 2 suitcases behind him. His wife followed, carrying a designer tote over her shoulder. "We're moving in," Ethan said, dropping the bags on the floor. His wife smiled tightly, her heels clicking on the hardwood. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just a visit. Dad didn't even blink. "Elena," he said, not looking up, "you can take the guest room or move out." His voice sounded flat, like he was reading from a script. I froze. My fork was still in the air. Ethan leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Come on, Elena. You don't need all that space. We're starting fresh here." His wife nodded, scanning the room as if she was already planning new furniture and decorations. I felt my anger rising. "Hold on," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "I've been paying for this house, electricity, repairs, mortgage. I bought the fridge, the water heater, even the paint on the walls. And now you want me to sleep on a fold-out couch?" My throat tightened. I looked at Dad, hoping for support, but he just sighed. "It's time to step back. Ethan and his wife need the room more. They've got plans." "Plans?" I wanted to scream. Ethan's plans never lasted more than a few months, and I was the one keeping the family afloat. Ethan leaned forward, grinning. "You're not exactly essential here, Elena," he said, his voice mocking. "You're just here." His wife stifled a laugh, covering her mouth with a manicured hand. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. "Not essential?" I shouted. "I've paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep this roof over your heads. I missed promotions to stay here. I worked weekends fixing leaks. What have you done, Ethan?" My voice cracked, but I didn't care. I was done being invisible. Dad slammed his hand on the table, making the glasses rattle. "Enough," he barked. "This isn't about you. They're family and they're staying. End of discussion." Mom looked down at her plate, twisting her napkin. She said nothing. I waited for her to say something, to look at me, but she stayed quiet. Ethan's wife leaned against him, whispering something that made him laugh. The room felt smaller, like the walls were closing in on me. I pushed my chair back and it screeched loudly. "I'm not doing this," I said, standing up. "If I'm not wanted, I'm leaving." I ran upstairs, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst. I grabbed a duffel bag and packed clothes, my laptop, and a few books. I went into the living room and unplugged the flat-screen TV I had bought last year. I dragged the couch cushions I had paid for to the front door. Ethan followed me, laughing. "You're taking the couch?" "Really," he said. I ignored him and carried my things to the car. Dad stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You're making a scene," he said. I didn't answer. I just left. I put the last box in the car, slammed the trunk shut, and drove away from my parents' house. I looked in the rearview mirror and watched the house get smaller and smaller. It wasn't just a house I was leaving. I was leaving years of heavy feelings I had been carrying for a very long time. Every wall seemed to hold memories I didn't want anymore, and every corner reminded me of arguments and sadness. I turned the corner, and the house disappeared from view. I felt a little empty, but also a little free. A few days later, I moved into a small apartment in downtown Omaha. The city was full of sounds, honking cars, people talking, music from shops, and the hum of life everywhere. It felt alive, and it was very different from the quiet, tense house I had left behind. My new home was small with just one bedroom, but it had enough space for my TV, sofa, and a small table. Samantha, my coworker, had helped me find it. She was always full of energy and ideas. Samantha came over the first night to help me unpack. She laughed as she carried boxes into the living room. Her laugh was warm, like sunshine through a cloudy sky. "Elena, you need to stop thinking so much," she said. "Come on, life is happening right now." She handed me a flyer for a yoga class nearby. "It's not just exercise. It will help your mind feel fresh and your body feel light." I looked at the flyer and felt unsure. Yoga seemed slow and calm, and I wasn't sure I needed that. But Samantha's excitement was hard to resist. I smiled and said, "Okay, I'll try it tomorrow." The next evening, I went to the yoga class. The studio smelled like candles and soft incense. I tried the poses, wobbling a little and almost falling over a few times. But every stretch felt good, like letting out a little sigh I hadn't even noticed I was holding. For the first time in weeks, I felt lighter. Samantha's words echoed in my mind, "A little anchor to help you stay steady." It felt good to take care of myself, even if just a little. But even as I tried to enjoy the new city, a worry was always in the back of my mind. It was about my brother Ethan's wife, Miriam. She had fancy bags, a shiny SUV, and she always talked about money and big deals. Something about her didn't feel right to me. I couldn't stop thinking about her, and I wanted to know if my feelings were real. I decided to call Nathan, an old friend I had met at work years ago. He knew a lot about real estate. "Elena, it's been a long time. How are you?" he said. I told him straight away about Miriam. I explained her job as a real estate agent and how she always acted like she had lots of money. Nathan became quiet for a moment. "Miriam Cole," he said. "I've heard a little about her. Her real estate company might be doing bad things, fake appraisals, charging clients too much money, things like that. Nothing is proven, but it's not looking clean." My heart sank. If Miriam was doing bad things, my family could be in real trouble. I thanked Nathan and hung up, my mind spinning with worry. I felt like I had to tell my parents. I called Dad first. "Dad, you need to hear this," I said. I explained what Nathan had told me about Miriam. Dad grunted. "Don't worry about it, Elena. They're fine without you getting involved," he said. I tried again, telling him more about the investigation. But he interrupted me. "Enough. Focus on your own life," he said and hung up. I felt angry and frustrated. Dad had always chosen Ethan's side, no matter what. I couldn't understand it. I called Mom next. "Mom, please listen," I said. "Miriam might be dangerous." Mom sighed. "Elena, let it go. They're happy. Don't ruin it." I wanted to scream. How could they be so blind? But I knew arguing was useless. Mom and Dad would never change their minds. I felt so alone, but I didn't want to give up. I decided to find out for myself. I emailed an old client who worked in real estate law. She confirmed Nathan's story. Miriam's company had complaints about fake mortgages and shady deals. Another friend who worked at a surveying company had overheard rumors that Miriam pushed risky deals and misled people. Every little piece of information made me feel more worried and more determined. I kept all this information secret. I didn't want anyone to get suspicious, and I didn't want to worry my parents more. I checked online every day. I found houses Miriam had sold for very high prices, and the buyers later complained. It wasn't proof, but it was enough to keep digging. I texted Nathan, asking him to tell me if he heard anything new. Meanwhile, I tried to live my new life. I worked, went to yoga, and had dinner with Samantha. The city felt like a fresh start, but the worry about my family never went away. 2 weeks later, I ran into Clara, an old family friend, at a cafe. She was drinking coffee and smiled when she saw me. "Elena, it's been a long time," she said. I told her about Ethan's wife, Miriam. Clara's smile disappeared. "Miriam Cole?" she asked quietly. I knew her a long time ago. She worked at a shady real estate company in Lincoln. They got in trouble for faking signatures and charging people too much money. Miriam got away, but she was involved in all of it. My heart started beating fast. This wasn't just gossip, it was real. I had been searching for clues, and now I had one. I drove to my parents' house as fast as I could. Ethan was outside, putting groceries in the house, looking proud of himself. "We need to talk," I said, showing him the email from Nathan about Miriam's investigation. He grabbed my phone, read the email, and threw it back at me. You're just jealous, he said. Miriam is successful, and you can't stand it. Stop lying. This isn't about me. I said. She's putting our family at risk. Ethan laughed, but it sounded bitter. Go play detective somewhere else, Elena. Inside, Mom was in the kitchen, stirring soup. I tried one more time. Mom, Clara knew Miriam before. She was part of a scam in Lincoln. You need to check what she's doing with the house, I said. Mom paused but didn't look at me. Elena, don't make trouble. Ethan is happy. That's what matters, she said. I felt hopeless. Mom always stayed out of fights, leaving me to deal with everything alone. Back at my apartment, I called Nathan. Clara confirmed it. Miriam is part of a crooked company in Lincoln. Is there anything new? Nathan told me something that made my stomach drop. Her name is on a mortgage for your parents' house, signed last month. She's tied to a shell company. If she's doing what I think, your family could lose everything. I couldn't believe it. The house I had worked so hard to keep was now in danger. I asked Nathan to send me the documents. My hands shook as I hung up the phone. I spent hours checking public records online. The mortgage was real. It was for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and Miriam's name was on it next to Dad's. I even found a transfer of money from my parents' savings to Miriam's agency. This wasn't just fraud, it was personal. She had tricked my family to get their money. All the times I had warned Dad and Mom felt like betrayal. They had chosen Ethan and Miriam over me. But I wasn't done. I saved every email, every document, every piece of evidence. I wasn't just protecting the house anymore. I wanted to expose Miriam. I wanted everyone to see who she really was. She couldn't hide. One evening, as I was working late in my apartment, my phone rang. It was Mom. Her voice was shaky, almost a whisper. Elena, there are people here. They're asking for Miriam, she said. I grabbed my keys and drove to my parents' house, my heart beating fast. When I arrived, 2 strangers were at the door. They looked serious and held folders and papers in their hands. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. My parents were behind me, looking scared and confused. Elena, Mom whispered. They want Miriam. They have questions about the house and the money. I realized that everything I had been worried about was real. Miriam's lies and tricks had finally caught someone's attention, and now the truth was coming out. My heart raced. I felt a mix of fear, relief, and determination. I knew I couldn't let Miriam get away. I showed the people all the evidence I had collected: emails, public records, documents from Nathan, and information from Clara. They listened carefully, taking notes and asking questions. Miriam was clever, but I had been clever too. I had saved everything and followed the clues. I could see that the people were beginning to understand the truth. I felt a little proud. For years, I had been worried about my family and felt powerless, but now I was helping protect them. My parents watched silently. They didn't say much, but I could see in their eyes that they were finally starting to understand. Dad looked uneasy and Mom seemed worried. It hurt to see how blind they had been, but I knew I had done the right thing. After the strangers left, my parents and I sat in the living room. The house felt quiet again, but it was different this time. It wasn't just quiet. It felt safe, like we had taken the first step toward fixing the problems Miriam had caused. I leaned back in my chair and thought about everything that had happened. I had left my parents' house thinking I was alone, but now I realized I had strength and courage I didn't know I had. I had friends like Samantha, old contacts like Nathan, and people like Clara who helped me. I felt ready to face whatever came next. Even though Miriam had tried to trick us and steal our family's money, I knew I could fight back. I had learned that being brave wasn't about never feeling afraid. It was about taking action even when you were scared. And I was ready. When I got home that evening, I noticed something strange right away. 2 police officers were standing in our driveway. Their shiny badges glinted under the porch light, and they both had serious expressions on their faces. Dad was at the front door, his face pale and worried. Ethan was pacing behind him, holding his phone tightly, as if it was his lifeline. This is about some real estate problems, one officer said, holding a thick stack of papers. We need to speak with Miriam Cole. She is connected to fake deals, forged papers, and money that has been taken illegally. I stayed quiet, standing a little behind them, trying to understand everything. Ethan's eyes widened as he heard the words. She's lying. Mom, tell me she's lying, he shouted, his voice cracking. He turned to Mom, who was frozen in the hallway, not saying a word. Her face was pale, and her hands were gripping her sweater tightly. The officers explained that Miriam had used Ethan's name to make several bad deals, including a loan connected to our house. Mom shook her head again but stayed silent. Dad stepped forward, his voice trembling. "She's not here right now," he said. The officers handed him a card and said they would return soon. As they left, I noticed Miriam's car pulling up across the street. She hadn't seen me yet. I took a deep breath and crossed the road, my phone in my pocket, already recording. "Miriam," I said, my voice steady even though I felt angry and scared inside. She froze and looked around, noticing me for the first time. "What's this about, Elena?" she asked sharply. I didn't back down. "I know about the mortgage, the savings, and everything else. You've been taking money from my family. Tell me the truth." Her face twisted, but she didn't run. "Fine," she snapped. "I took the money. The house was part of a deal your dad signed. Ethan didn't notice anything." I pressed record harder, making sure to catch every word. "You used them," I said. She smirked, not feeling sorry at all. "They trusted me." "That's on them," she said, like it was completely normal. Before I could say anything else, she jumped into her car and drove away, tires screeching against the asphalt. I stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of what she had just admitted. She was gone, leaving my family to deal with the mess she had made. Back at the house, Ethan looked like he was about to fall apart. His shoulders slumped, and his eyes were wide with fear. "How could she do this?" he muttered, running his hands through his hair. He turned to me, his voice trembling. "Elena, you knew something was wrong. Why didn't you stop her?" I stared at him, shocked. "I tried," I said. "You called me jealous. You and the others shut me out." Mom looked away, and her silence felt louder than any words she could say. Dad sank into a chair, his hands covering his face. The officers' papers were still on the table, showing all the bad loans and transfers I had warned them about. Later that night, my phone rang. It was Dad. His voice sounded broken and tired. "Elena, we're in trouble," he said. "The bank is calling in the loan. We might lose the house. Can you come back? We need you." I closed my eyes, thinking about all the years I had worked so hard for this house. I had paid bills, fixed broken things, cooked dinners, cleaned, and helped in so many ways, and still, I had been pushed aside. "No, Dad," I said, my voice firm. "I gave everything for that house, and you chose Ethan and Miriam over me. You're on your own now." He tried to speak, stumbling over his words, but I hung up. For the first time in years, I felt free. I had let go of a heavy weight I had carried for too long. The next morning, I listened to the recording again. Miriam's voice was cold and clear, admitting to stealing the money. I saved it, knowing it could help the officers later. My family had to face the consequences themselves. 6 months later, I drove back to my parents' house to see what had happened. The front yard was quiet, and the porch light was still on from the night before. Inside, papers were scattered across the dining table. Bank notices, loan papers, and a warning that the bank might take the house. I sat down with Dad, who handed me a folder from the bank. The numbers were terrifying. A second loan for $250,000 had been taken out by him and Miriam, and no payments had been made. Their savings account, which had once held nearly $200,000, was empty. The money had been sent to an account connected to Miriam's company. I studied the papers carefully, using my engineering brain to understand all the damage. The house I had worked so hard to keep safe was now at risk of being taken by the bank. Ethan slumped onto the couch, his eyes red from crying. "Elena, you have to help us," he said, his voice breaking. "The bank is coming for everything. We're broke." I looked at him, remembering how he had laughed at me before, and ignored my warnings about Miriam. "Help you?" I asked, my voice cold. "You told me I wasn't important. You and Dad pushed me away. Now you want me to fix your problems." He flinched but kept talking. "We're family," he said. "You can't just walk away." I shook my head. "You made your choice. I'm done saving you." Dad stood by the window, his shoulders hunched. "I messed up, Elena," he said quietly. "I trusted her. I thought you and Ethan had it all figured out. I was wrong." I felt a pang of sadness, but I stayed firm. "You didn't just trust her, Dad. You chose her over me. You chose Ethan's dreams over my reality. I can't fix that." Mom came into the room, her face streaked with tears. "Elena, please," she said, her voice trembling. "We're going to lose everything, the house, our savings, it's all gone." She reached for my hand, but I pulled back. "You didn't listen, Mom," I said. "I tried to warn you about Miriam, but you told me to let it go. Now you want me to save you." She sobbed, but her tears couldn't fix the years I had been ignored. I felt guilty, but it wasn't enough to change my mind. I wasn't going to be their safety net anymore. I walked through the house, noticing all the things I had helped with. The new windows I had paid for, the fridge I had replaced, the walls I had painted. Now all of it was in danger because of Miriam. The bank letters said the house could be taken within a few weeks. Ethan had no job or plan, Dad's pension wouldn't cover the debt, and Mom's part-time job barely paid for groceries. They were barely surviving. I realized I couldn't fix this. Not because I didn't have the money, but because I didn't know them anymore. I left the house, feeling the weight of their problems, but also a strange sense of relief. Back at my apartment, I looked at the recording of Miriam admitting to stealing. I sent it to the officers to help their case, but it wouldn't bring back the money or the house. My family was broken, not just because of Miriam, but because they had ignored me for so many years. I had built a new life in Omaha, with my own space, my own choices, and my own rules. I wasn't going back to carry their burdens. 6 months later, I was in my apartment with Samantha. Sunlight streamed through the window, and we shared a bottle of wine. My desk was covered with papers from my new project at work, a bridge I was designing. I had earned a promotion to lead engineer. My raise gave me enough money to furnish my apartment with a new coffee table and a bookshelf I had always wanted. Samantha, my closest friend, raised her glass. "To you, Elena," she said with a wide smile. "You're doing amazing." I laughed, feeling happiness I hadn't known in years. My life was finally mine. I went to yoga twice a week, cooked dinners with Samantha, and worked on my projects, which I loved. I was happy, not because everything was perfect, but because I had chosen myself. I heard through a friend that my family had lost the house. The bank had taken it after too many missed payments. They moved to a small rental apartment in Omaha. Ethan worked part-time at a hardware store. His confidence was gone, replaced by late-night calls to friends asking for loans. Dad drove for a delivery service. Mom cleaned houses. They were surviving, but just barely. I hadn't spoken to them since that last visit. Ethan sent a few texts asking for money or a place to stay, but I didn't reply. Dad left voicemails, his tone softer than before, but I didn't call. Mom sent a letter full of apologies and regrets, but I left it unopened. I spent years carrying their burdens and being ignored. Cutting them off wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I learned to value my self-respect over their expectations. I had to protect my heart, my time, and my life. Looking back, I realized the lesson clearly. Family isn't just people with the same blood. Family is people who see you, value you, and stand by you. Samantha had become that for me, a friend who showed up without asking for anything in return. My family had chosen Miriam's lies over my warnings, and I had paid the price. But walking away made me stronger. I found my own worth. Setting boundaries wasn't about shutting people out. It was about protecting what mattered most, my heart, my time, and my life. For the first time, I felt proud of myself. I had tried to help, I had warned them, and I had fought for my family, but they had chosen their own path. I couldn't fix their mistakes, and I didn't have to. I was free to live my own life, make my own decisions, and be happy on my own terms. And in that freedom, I discovered something I had never had before: peace. I was no longer the one carrying the weight of everyone else's choices. I had learned to stand up for myself, to say no when it was necessary, and to love myself enough to walk away when others didn't value me. Life wasn't perfect. There were still challenges at work, and my apartment sometimes felt too quiet. But it was mine, and I could make it what I wanted. Every day, I woke up knowing that I was in control of my life, my happiness, and my future. I looked at the recording of Miriam again. Her voice was proof of what had happened, and it made me feel strong. I had fought, I had warned, and I had survived. My family would face their consequences, and I would face mine. But for the first time, I was ready to focus on myself. I had chosen myself, and it felt amazing.